Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this Monday afternoon for our church service. This is all made possible live streaming through Restream, where anybody that's watching YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or Twitch can watch us at the same time. It's all thanks to Restream.io. This is Scriptural Salvation Baptist Tabernacle. My name is Andy, and welcome to my living room. In the camera, visible to everybody to my left, we'll start with Paul and Richard on the floor. We have Steve. To my right, she just sat down, is my daughter Grace. My wife Elizabeth with baby Leah, who is 3 weeks old today. My daughter Hannah is over in the corner, and right off camera is Jacob and our dog Sweetheart. We had a little cold running through the house all last week. It affected my voice, so I chose just to do songs that we've done before for our service today.
Yeah.
We're going to start off with a traditional hymn in the bluegrass style, and then a quick barbershop quartet, Heaven's Joy Awaits.
Yay!
All right. So, we're going to be doing Nothing But the Blood of Jesus. Get that ready to go. This is going to go kind of fast because I think it's going to pretty much jump right into it. But are we ready?
No.
Jump into the next song, Heaven's Joy Awaits. And this song being in the style of bluegrass, or of barbershop quartet, Long B word. All right.
When we leave this lone land, we will cross the Jordan, past this chilly torrent, heaven's joy awaits. Heaven's just beyond the horizon, heaven's just above the starry sky. This land of sorrow, runs away. Love each tear inside, every side, and just a few more miles before us. And there is just a little while to wait. Jesus soon will sing redemption's chorus. Our story's heaven's joy awaits, heaven awaits. Heaven's breeze is blowing gently to me, calling. I will soon be going through the pearly gates. Just beyond the horizon, heaven just on the starry sky, far above this land of sorrow, away from each tear inside, every side, just a few more miles before us, and there is just a little time to wait. Soon we'll sing redemption's chorus. Heaven's joy awaits, heaven awaits.
All right. Now we will continue on in the book of Genesis. We heard a really strange story last week about rape and just really odd. But this week I promise it's a little bit better, but it's going to continue the narrative of Jacob's children. So that is where we will pick up.
Well,
Sorry. Okay. Okay. To start this from the beginning. No. We are in our 27th lesson in the book of Genesis. And we will be in chapters 37 and 38. We will start with Psalm number 31, and we're going to finish off that we started last week with a grace.
for I hear the whispering of many, terror on every side, as they scheme together against me, as they plot to take my life. But I trust in you, O Lord. I say you and are my God.
No bit of glory.
My times are in your hand. Rescue me from your hand, from the hand of my enemies, and from my persecutors. Make your face shine on your
servant.
Save me in your steadfast love.
Very good, Paul.
That was no glare.
Oh Lord, let me not be put to shame, for I call upon you. Let the wicked be put to shame. Let them go silently to Sheol. Let the lying lips be mute, which speak insolently against the righteous in pride and contempt.
Oh, how abundant is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you and work for those who take refuge in you, in the sight of children of mankind. In the cover of your presence, you hide them from the plots of men. You store them in your shelter on the strife of tongues.
Blessed be the Lord, for he has wondrously shown his steadfast love to me when I was in a let me try to
Yeah.
besieged city.
Yes.
I had said in my alarm, I am cut off from your sight. But you heard the voice of my pleas for mercy when I cried to you for help.
Very good.
Love the Lord, all his and you, his saints. The Lord preserves the faithful, but abundantly repays the one who acts in pride. Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who wait for the Lord.
Very good.
That wall come down.
Okay. We're going to start off by listening to Genesis 37, verses 1 through 4. 37, 1 through 4. Genesis 37, 1 through 4.
Genesis 37. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him.
Okay. So now we're going to pick up the story of Joseph, one of the sons of Jacob, the second to last.
Oh.
All right. So some of the sons, we know some things about them, what happened to them. Reuben, who had that one little throwaway line where he took one of Jacob's concubines to be his own, which is he basically slept with his stepmother. Don't do that. The Bible frowns upon that. So Reuben, being the oldest, that takes him out of the line of succession. So the line of blessing that we've been following through Abraham and Isaac and all that is not going to go through Reuben, the oldest. And before Reuben did that, Simeon and Levi went through and slaughtered an entire town because one of the leaders of that town had raped his sister. Now those two are eliminated from succession. So cut them right out. So you have Reuben, Simeon, Levi. The next oldest is Judah. But it doesn't focus on Judah yet. It's focusing on Joseph. Now, when Joseph was born, it was 14 years into Jacob working for Laban. Now, remember, Jacob had gone to his relative's house, He worked for Laban for 7 years to win Rachel, and Laban give him Leah instead, and then he worked another 7 years so that he could have Rachel for his wife. And it was almost at the end of that 14 years that Joseph was born. So that would make Joseph about 6-ish years old when they entered into the promised land, because Jacob stayed another 6 years and worked and built up his fortune. So this story picks up Joseph as a shepherd, and he's about 17 years old. Now, I've mentioned before that shepherding is one of the favored occupations of the Lord in the Bible. A lot of your famous important people are shepherds. King David being one of them. There's a lot of stories about shepherds and tending sheep. So Joseph is a shepherd. Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. So Joseph goes out to tend sheep with his other brothers, and he comes back to his father and tells them how bad his brothers are. He's a tattletale. He goes out and he sees his siblings doing things they're not supposed to do. He goes back and he tells Dad, and that makes his brothers not like him. He's one of the youngest, and he's out there acting like he's better than everybody else, and he's bringing a bad report to his father. What, honey?
I'm afraid and people still tattletale.
Oh, they're going to tattletale all the way until you get a job.
Exactly.
I work with
Well,
people
through that too.
I work with people that tattletale to this day. So, so it's nothing new. It happened here at the beginning of time in the book of Genesis, and it still goes on to this day.
Oh.
Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons. So Jacob, not learning his lesson, where he shows favorites and picks some over others, loves Joseph because Joseph is the one son of his favorite wife, Rachel. So I'm guessing at this point, Rachel maybe had not had Benjamin yet and died. There are some signs that this chapter is written out of chronological order from the one we just read. So he's made a robe of many colors. Now, many people picture this as a long desert robe with long sleeves, and it's in all kinds of different colors. But in the original Hebrew, it could just mean that instead of having a short tunic where you go out and work in the fields, it was a long sleeved tunic that went all the way to his wrists and all the way down to the floor. The Hebrew's ambiguous here. We're not sure exactly what it means, but it's symbolized and signified Joseph as a privileged person. But why was this robe given to him? Now, some scholars say that Joseph was chosen as the person, that Jacob had chosen Joseph as the person to receive the birthright. Now, remember when I started that it's supposed to go to Judah because he's the next brother in line, but Jacob, who has always played favorites and always chosen some over the others, loves his son Joseph and gives him this colorful coat. But the interesting thing here is that he gives him this robe of many colors. He may not have been chosen as the next birthright or blessed. Joseph may have given him this robe of many colors just because he was the son of his favorite wife, Rachel. Yeah. Because now back with Jacob and Esau, they were foretold that the younger would serve the older. And I put a question mark next to Judah because remember, he's the one that actually is supposed to inherit the birthright. So at the point that we're standing, Joseph has this robe that's many colored, long sleeved, basically something signifying that he's better than everybody else. All the other kids see the favoritism. They hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Well, he kind of did to himself. You know, his father treats him differently, and then he goes and acts like he's better than them and tattletales on everybody. So he's not doing himself any favors. Let's just say that. So, listen to verses 5 through 11 of chapter 37. Through 11, chapter 37.
Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it, and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream, told it to his brothers, and said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bound down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him. But his father kept the saying in mind.
Prophecy through dreams is important. We've met some people so far that have gotten dreams from the Lord and they've been interpreted. The Lord uses it to reveal his sovereign plan to people, but Joseph really is naive in this situation, going through and telling his brothers, "I'm going to be much better than you, and I'm going to rule over you, and you're going to bow down right to the ground to me." Probably something you should keep to yourself. But maybe if the dream is about those that hate you, you should keep it to yourself. Like his brothers already don't like him because he goes and tells his father everything that they're doing wrong. Now he's going to tell them a dream where they're going to bow down to him in his life and be subservient to him. He's not doing himself any favors.
It's a perfect setup for an arrogant person.
Yeah. So Joseph is favored by his father, but hated by his brothers, and he dreams they will bow down to him. Now, normally in a dream where you have prophecy, your dreams need to be interpreted. And we saw that back in the book of Daniel, where Nebuchadnezzar had the dream and none of the people could interpret it. And some of the dreams in Revelation, the visions that were shown, we need to have interpretations for them. But this one doesn't need to be interpreted. Joseph's out there, and his piece of wheat rises up, and all the other pieces of wheat bow down before it. It's pretty clear, and it makes his brothers hate him. Remember the crops in the field, though, because this theme will return later when this prophecy does come true.
Oh.
Then he has another dream, and he tells them again. Yes, honesty is the best policy, but within reason. It wouldn't exactly be dishonest if he didn't tell them what the dream was. Maybe he should have kept those to himself.
That's the difference between talking too much and not talking at all.
Yes. Now, in this dream, it's the sun, moon, and the stars, and this is imagery that is used for the nation of Israel in the book of Revelation. It's the same dream where Joseph is the most important piece and everybody bows down to him. But in this dream, the sun, moon, and stars stand for something that comes up later in the book of Revelation. There is more hatred by the brothers, and this time the father is unimpressed. He's like, maybe you shouldn't have told us that dream. I mean, are we really all going to bow down to you? And this is what makes me question the chronology of this chapter, because the father says, are me and your mother going to bow down to you? Well, if you remember at the end of the last chapter, his mother had just had Benjamin and she died in childbirth. But here he's talking like about the mother like she's alive. So I think that the events of this chapter happen before the brother is born and the mother dies, and it's just inserted in after, because the Bible does that a lot. It's all about telling the story the way that it needs to be told. Because we weren't focusing on the story of Joseph before, this wasn't important to the narrative that was going on. Remember, Rebecca had a prophecy about her twins, Jacob and Esau, being in the womb, and how the younger would rule the older, that the older shall serve the younger. And things like that are very important to the Bible narrative.
That turns a movie theater.
I knew he would do that.
I stopped using that one.
This one?
Yeah, that one. Turns a movie theater. The glass breaking.
So we'll continue on in chapter 37, verses 12 through 24.
This is the old show.
Verses 12 through 24.
Daddy, I'm going to
Oops, wrong one.
I'll give myself some more.
Nope,
Oh.
we're going to sit right there and wait.
Fine.
Click down. It should be the wrong thing.
Okay, she needs to get down.
What happened?
She's gagging over.
The dog?
Yeah.
Oh no.
All right.
Oh.
All right. Verses 12 through 24.
Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, here I am. So he said to him, go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, what are you seeking? I am seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock. And the man said, they have gone away, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood. Cast him into here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and cast him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it.
Here. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. So his brothers go to pasture the flock. How come Joseph is at home? How come he's not out there helping the shepherding? Is it because his father favored him and thought of him as special above the brothers? Maybe. That's possibly what's going on here. Now, Joseph comes from generations of competitive families. You remember Isaac and Rebekah and how they always fought with each other over Isaac loving Esau and Rebekah loving Jacob. And then on to the family of Jacob, where he has 4 wives and all these different children through the different wives, and they're all playing favorites with each other and being competitive. And this breeds lots of jealousy. Now, Joseph goes out there to find the brothers because his father's. Now, what's interesting here is the brothers don't like Joseph, and the father takes Joseph and practically wraps him up in a big present with a giant bow on his head, says, "Here, do something to him," and sends him out to go tattle on his brothers. Now, they're not in their stated spot that they're supposed to be in. Now, Shechem, we learned about, was that city that the bad stuff happened to Dinah. So because we know that this happens before that, that this is a city that's not a good place, but this is where the brothers are supposed to be. If they're not where they're supposed to be, does it bring a good report or a bad report? Paul, what would it bring? If they're not okay, very good.
There we go.
Here comes this dreamer. They call the brother a dreamer. Let's kill him and lie about it. Now, I honestly feel that the events of this happened before the rape and the slaughtering in the next chapter. So this is the brothers progressing down the road to evil. So, being the favored one, Joseph, he doesn't work. Remember, he's at home with his father while his brothers are out shepherding. He only goes out and delivers reports to their father. This adds into the jealousy and the father's obvious playing favorites here by giving him the coat of many colors with long sleeves that goes to the floor. There's a lot of contempt here. The brothers do not like Joseph. And Joseph, who is in his robe of many colors, who just randomly shows up when they're in a place they're not supposed to be, and he's wrapped up like a present with a big bow on top of his head like his father, the brothers decide, you know what, it's time for you to die. And they have this plan, and they're going to kill him. And Reuben, Paul, do you have to use potty?
No.
Okay, just checking. If you did, it's okay. Now, Reuben being the eldest. Now, in the last chapter, we had learned how Reuben slept with one of Jacob's concubines, and that ruled him out of succession. But this is something that happens before that. So he tries to save his brother Joseph's life. He has this plan where he's like, well, let's not kill him. He goes, throw him into that pit, and then later on I'll come back and grab him and take him back to Dad, and he'll be alive, and I'll look like a hero. Don't mistake this. Reuben is trying to distinguish himself from the other brothers and trying to make himself look good. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's not because he's a genuinely good person. Obviously not. I mean, we hear about the stuff that he does later. So he's not a good person. He's selfish. Reuben is trying to win favor from his father. He shouldn't have to. He's the eldest. What he should have done is, listen, let's not kill. It's not right for us to kill this boy or to take him and to throw him in a pit. He's our brother. We should love him. And if he wanted to be a good brother and look good in his father's eyes, he would have kept his brother alive and brought him home. But he doesn't do that. Leah, his mother, tried to win favor with her husband by giving him all kinds of kids, and she was never loved like her sister Rachel was. And Reuben just doesn't try hard enough to save his brother Joseph's life. He may seem like a sympathetic character, but he's really not trying hard enough to be good. Don't let him fool you. Everyone else is building the resume for their massacre that comes later. Remember, your sins start out as thoughts. You have to think about the terrible things that you're going to do. And when you have all these terrible thoughts, whether you act on them or not, they start to stain your heart. So that when the opportunity does come and you're going to go in and slaughter an entire village for raping your sister, it's not as hard for you to think about doing it. It's just much easier for you to follow through with the act. And Joseph gets abandoned in an empty pit, and his brothers take the coat that got him into all this trouble. The coat that shows him as this favored son who's better than everybody else.
Away by the wind.
And we'll finish off chapter 37 with verses 25 through 36.
It's already been 30 minutes.
Yes?
How?
I don't know.
Time goes fast.
It does. All right. So verses 25 through 36. This is a little strange.
Then they sat down to eat, and looking up they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up, and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit, and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and I, where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe, and slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors, and brought it to their father, and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it, and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments, and put sackcloth on his loins, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard.
Now, so the brothers take Joseph, and they don't beat him up, they don't rough him up, they don't kill him, they throw him into a pit and leave him there. And while he's in there and he can hear what's going on, they sit down and they eat lunch. This is just outright cruel. It reminds me of one time, an inmate story here. I remember one time an inmate punched another inmate in the face and knocked him out and left him bloody. He had broken his nose, and the guy was laying on the ground. And the one inmate that had knocked him out had blood all over his hand, and picked up his food and started to eat. And it's just, for some reason, that reminded me of this. It's cool.
Disgusting.
It is disgusting. But I
That's
saw it. True story.
disgusting. What year was that in?
Somewhere between 2004 and 2007.
Oh.
So there was a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. This is what we would call Arab traders. They were relatives of the Israelites. Remember, Ishmael was the other brother to Isaac, and the relatives of Ishmael were the Arab traders in the desert. Now, Judah, the brother who was going to end up inheriting, steps up here and said, let's not kill him, let's sell him. You know, he is our brother, our own flesh. And basically what he's saying here is, let's sell our brother and let him die somewhere else. Basically what he's doing is he's being like Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate was the governor that chose to let Jesus be turned over to the crowds to be crucified. Pilate, who had all the power to spare Jesus' life, even Pilate said, you know, Jesus isn't willing of death. He's innocent. He didn't do anything that warrants us to put him to death. Still turned Jesus over to the crowds to die. Judah, who knows his brother is innocent, knows that he is his brother, our own flesh, still says, but let's sell him anyway, and we'll let them kill him. So this would make Joseph an innocent character who's being sold off for somebody to be killed. And sold him for 20 shekels of silver. Another famous innocent man that was sold was Jesus, and he was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Just a little interesting tidbit there. I tried to look that up, and because they just say 30 pieces of silver and not shekels, we're not sure. But so Reuben goes back to the pit to get his brother because he was going to play the hero and save the day and bring his brother unharmed. My question is, where was Reuben after they all sat down to eat lunch and they sold his brother to slavery? I would always assume that all the brothers sat down and they were over there having a great time and toasting and, you know, drinking their wine and singing songs, and for he's a jolly good fellow, while the brother's sitting in the pit thinking he's going to die, and they're having a great time and dancing. But apparently Reuben wasn't there. He comes back and his brother's gone. He's like, crud. I'm not going to be the hero that I thought I was going to be. Maybe I should have stood up and stopped this before it even began. Now, it doesn't say he thought that.
You just put the words in.
What?
You just put the words in.
Reuben is a sympathetic character because he kind of wanted to do the right thing, but he was doing it for the wrong reasons. He was selfish. He had the power to stop this entire transaction from happening. He had the power to stop his brother from being sold into slavery. He's similar to Pontius Pilate, who I mentioned earlier, just gave Jesus over to the Jewish crowds to be crucified. Pilate may seem like a sympathetic character who knows that Jesus is innocent, knows he didn't do anything wrong, but he still gives Jesus over to be crucified, and Pilate had the power to stop it. Reuben allowed all this to happen and had the power to stop it. None of this is done out of love. They do seem sympathetic, but they're selfish as well. They're thinking about themselves. They take Joseph's blood or robe and they dip it in goat's blood. They obviously didn't have crime scene investigating kits back. They were still thousands of years off. So this would have been before the TV show when Bill Grissom shows up with his little kit and goes, nope, this is goat blood. No, that didn't happen back then. Or that strange guy in CSI Miami where his sunglasses never come off his head. You fall off a building 19 stories laying on the ground and there are his sunglasses with an explosion going off. And anyway, I'm back on topic.
Yeah, you're going a little too far, so
Nope.
please.
Never.
Go
please.
back to the
So
topic.
then the brothers look at their father and they go, please identify whether it is your son's robe or not. This is cold. That would be like Jacob, my Jacob, coming home carrying Paul's glasses, going, please identify if these are your son's glasses or not. No, Dad, or these are my brother's glasses. So no, none of these kids even associate this brother as theirs. Jacob, the father, is heartbroken, as he should be. Now, what's interesting is something that Joseph doesn't do during this entire time is complain. Yeah, he brought the whole thing on himself by acting better than everybody else and telling all his dreams and tattletaling, but he doesn't complain. And then we'll learn through the rest of the story about Joseph that he's not a complainer. He's like Jesus, an innocent man sent out to die. So the comparison is Joseph is similar to Jesus. And we will move on to chapter 38, verses 1 through 11. And in this chapter, it focuses on the family of Judah.
Oh.
So we're going to take a break from Joseph and hear about his older brother Judah, who is the one that will be carrying on the family lineage and heritage.
Genesis 38. It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. He took her and went in to her, and she conceived and bore a son. And he called his name She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and she called his name Shelah. Judah was in Chezib when she bore him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would waste the semen on the ground, so as not to give offspring to his brother. And what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house till Shelah my son grows up, for he feared that he would die like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house.
Okay. It's a little strange. I hope I sum this up.
So 2 people are put to death. That's just
Well,
right.
Yeah, but there's a little more to the story than just people die. Judah leaves his house and goes and finds a Canaanite wife. A Canaanite wife named Shua. The common theme here is with any of these patriarchs, we're told, don't go and marry Canaanites. But Judah does just that. He goes and Judah does just that. Is that better? He goes and he marries a Canaanite woman. And he has 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. These are sons from a frowned upon marriage where the lines between the called out Israelites and the wicked Canaanites have been mixed. The oldest is married to another Canaanite woman named Tamar. Is wicked and he is put to death. We're not told what does, what made him wicked. We're just told that he was a wicked person and God put him to death. All we know is that he's the son of a Canaanite Hebrew mixed marriage. And these are frowned upon in the patriarch times. So Onan, the next brother, is told, go into your brother's wife and raise up offspring for your brother. This was a common practice in the day. It was called levirate marriage. And if there was a son who was married and the son ends up dying, the next brother would have to marry the wife and have children for the widow with the widow of his brother's the widow of his brother, so that she would have children so that they could take care of her. And these sons wouldn't be said to be the sons of the second brother. They would said to be sons of the dead older brother. So that would be like Richard got married and he has a wife and he ends up dying before he can have children. Jacob would have to marry that woman and have children with her, and then they wouldn't be called your kids, they'd be called his kids. That's what was practiced in ancient Near East, and it's actually still practiced to this day. And the reason being, because women in that day had no status at all. They couldn't live by themselves. And they either had to live with their families, or when they were married, they had to live with their husbands' families, or they had to be taken care of by their kids. And since her husband was dead, she had to have kids to be taken care of. So Richard has died, and Jacob comes along, and he's supposed to provide children for his dead brother's wife. So that's what's going on here. Now, back to Onan. Onan would go in there, and he knew that he would have kids with this woman, and they wouldn't even be called his kids. They would be the kids of his brother So he decides, I'm not going to have any part of that. And the Bible here says he would waste the semen on the ground. So he would do the things that a husband and wife were supposed to do, except for finish. Right up to the end of it, he had no follow through. See, so he wasn't creating the babies. He was doing the things that a husband and wife were supposed to do, except for the end. Now, some people claim that this teaches that the Bible says you're not supposed to. What? Is a little sensitive for you? It's in the Bible. This is good. This is good stuff right here. I've had to talk to you about some really strange stuff. Don't quit on me now.
I've been ignoring that stuff.
Okay. Now, some people claim that because Onan wasted his semen on the ground, that the Bible here is saying it's against God's law to masturbate, to waste your semen.
What is semen? What is that?
Well, it's something that a man needs to make a baby.
She's not.
All right. I don't need that right now. Okay. So some people try to say that this is a passage that teaches that you're not supposed to masturbate, but that's not what this passage is about. It's not about pleasuring yourself. It's about husbands and wives not fulfilling their husband and wife duty. And what this does is it leaves Tamar childless. So the whole reason for the younger brother going in there with his older brother's wife was so that she would have children and he wouldn't go through and do it. Now he ends up getting struck down, dead. Now that still leaves another brother. He's younger. He's not old enough to go in there in that cleanup for his two older brothers that have died. All right, are we all caught up? It's not going to be as sensitive. Well, actually, maybe it will. Now, Onan is wicked. He's selfish, and he's struck down. His younger brother Shelah is still young, so he can't go in there and marry Tamar yet. Judah doesn't want Shelah to end up dead. So Judah takes Tamar and goes, just go back to your father's house and live as a widow. The custom of the day was she couldn't be sent back to her family's house. She belonged to Judah's household now. It was actually Judah's obligation, and Judah's family was supposed to take care of this woman who had two dead husbands. But he doesn't. He's neglectful. He's not a very good father, caretaker, husband, anything. Whatever Judah is, he's not good at it. So, but that doesn't take him out of the line of succession. Unlike Reuben, who and Levi and Simeon. So Judah still hasn't done enough to get himself taken out of succession.
Glass breaking. You didn't have glass
Verses
breaking.
12 through 13 of chapter 38.
But you didn't have glass breaking in a while.
No. So stick with me here. I'm getting it. If you thought that last section was weird, it's about to get stranger.
No. No, God. No, God, please, no.
No, we're not doing that, Paul.
Now we are going to share the right screen. Okay.
In course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah was comforted, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. And when Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep," she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, and she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come in to you." For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me that you may come in to me?" He answered, "I will send you a young goat from the flock." And she said, "If you give me a pledge until you send it." He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and went in to her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. And he asked the men of the place, "Where is the cult prostitute who was at Enaim at the roadside?" And they said, "No cult prostitute has been here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I have not found her." Also the men of the place said, "No cult prostitute has been here." And Judah replied, "Let her keep the things as her own, or we shall be laughed at. You see, I sent this young goat, and you did not find her."
Okay. Yep. Judah is now a widower, and his wife has died. And he goes off traveling to visit sheep shearers, and Tamar, the daughter-in-law that he has not taken care of like he was supposed to, and he has not given her his youngest son like he was supposed to, is told about it. And she figures that she's been dealt with unfairly and left a widow by Judah. She saw that Shelah was grown up, so she knows that Judah doesn't like her and is just leaving her be a widow.
Have we been done with the Joseph stuff?
Nope, we'll go back to Joseph. He's important. But we're showing what happens to the brother that inherits the promise. And she tricks Judah, who is the son of a trickster, by the way. Remember, Jacob went through his whole life playing tricks on people. So the son of a trickster is tricked by this woman, Tamar, who is he's supposed to be taking care of her. And she tricks him into thinking that she's a prostitute. And she says, "Well, your payment, you can give me a goat. In the meantime, as you're sending me the goat, I'm just going to keep your signet ring, your cord, and your staff so that I have something so that when you come and bring me the goat, I'll give you these things back." And the reason she asks for these things is because they will identify him as Judah. How did Judah not know that it was his daughter-in-law? Well, she kept covered up during this exchange, and also she had never been his. She was always the wife of his children, and women in that time were always covered up when they were around men. Also, maybe there was alcohol involved. I don't know, you always have to think of that in these stories. He was going out looking for prostitutes, so he probably was drinking alcohol as well. Tamar, after the deed is done, returns to her life as normal, and she has fulfilled, well, she's fulfilling her trick. She's waiting for it to come full circle. Judah sends her payment of the goat, but Tamar was not there because she wasn't a regular prostitute. She knew that that Judah was coming, so she pretended to be a prostitute where prostitutes normally don't go. She goat him, not got him. She goat him.
Continue.
Continue.
Rico sister, continue.
Traditionally, when the payment was received, the pledge was returned, but because they couldn't find her, she didn't want to be found, she kept the signet ring, the cord, and the staff of Judah. Let her keep the things on her own. There's no payment for this bad prostitute. So we'll move along and finish up this story
Trash. Trash.
with verses 24 through 30. Verses 24 through 30.
About 3 months later, Judah was told, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality. And Judah said, Bring her out and let her be burned. As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, By the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant. And she said, Please identify whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff. Then Judah identified them and said, She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah. And he did not know her again. When the time of her labor came, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, This one came out first. But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out, and she said, What a breach you have made for yourself. Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward, his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah.
Okay. So, quick little section to finish this off. Judah is told Tamar is pregnant by immorality. She's a widowed woman without a husband, and she's pregnant, which means she was going and doing things she wasn't supposed to do. But also, Judah never gave his son to her like he was supposed to, so that the son could have children for his two dead brothers. Judah blames her. He never really liked her. He says basically, burn her. She's been immoral. You know, she hasn't been a good person. Light her up. Now, Tamar appeals to logic. She says, isn't the guy that these items they belong to, isn't he just as guilty as I am? And Judah says, well, if you have the things that identify this guy, let me take a look at him. And Judah goes over there and recognizes that those things are his. He's the father of these children that she has, and that he recognizes immediately that he's been wrong. She's allowed to live. They don't end up getting married, but the children that she was supposed to have through these Richard, the children that she's supposed to have so that she's not a widow and taken care of, she has through Judah himself. Now Shelah, the youngest son that should have been given to her, not important. Doesn't matter. What happens to him? Don't care. We move on. Now the twins are significant because Judah had already lost 2 sons to being wicked. They replace his lost wicked children. So one of the sons, as she's about to give birth, sticks the hand out, and the handmaid ties a little red knot around the wrist, but the son pulls the wrist back in. This is similar to what happened with the twins Jacob and Esau, where Esau was coming out and Jacob grabbed his heel. This is twins in the womb, and they play little tricks on the people that are getting ready to help them be born. The son without the cord tied around his wrist is named Perez, which means breach, or he was about to be born second, but he breached himself in front of the other brother and went first. The other brother that had the red scarlet cord tied around his wrist is Zerah, which is dawn or first. Why do we have this strange story about Judah and Tamar? One, it highlights the Canaanite problem within the Israelite lineage. It outlines that people other than the line of Jacob and can play tricks on people and be cunning. The trick that Tamar played on her father-in-law to have children. But the most important piece on why we have this story is that Jesus is a descendant of Perez. So this son that's born out of all these different bad circumstances goes on to be a descendant of Jesus. This Perez is in the messianic lineage. You get something good from a bad situation. So that's why we have this strange story about prostitutes and people emitting on the ground and things like that. And we will end on the song God of Wonders. Bless you.
Excuse me.
All right. Nope, not that.
Huh?
what it was doing, it was playing this at the same exact time as somebody in the background was singing this. So
Oh,
I couldn't tell what was what.
it just sounded like a whole bunch of people
It
singing
sounded
at
like
once.
a jumble.
It was a jumble.
A
Well,
jumble.
Anyway, I'm not going to use that version of the song again.
Please don't.
Okay.
That was
We
very
know that
confusing.
song, but it just
It was all scrambled off.
Yes, it was. Anyway, I hope you were able to learn something out of that message, whether it was Joseph and his dreams and how they got him in trouble, or Judah and the mess of his family.
Alright, so the moral is don't have dreams, don't have kids.
I don't quite think so, but okay. I hope everybody has a good week. Next week we will not be able to have church at 6:30 like this week because Grace has rehearsal until 7:30.
I thought you were gonna say kids.
So I believe we'll go back to our 8 o'clock start time next week. And then after that we'll fly by the seat of our pants, I guess, because then we get into marching band is going to start up, and we'll figure it out as it goes, folks. But then it'll start on Mondays and Wednesdays, if I remember the calendar. So,
Oh boy.
exactly. So, with that being said, I'll make Facebook posts on it. You'll know, and the beauty with streaming is that you'll be able to go back and rewatch. So, hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you next week, hopefully.